I do not like this man as a person. Book of all time. Emotions of disgust. That I only wanted to read it because everyone was dunking on it. Hi, welcome back to my channel. I'm Lena, and today we are doing a tier ranking of every single book I read in 2022. Happy New Year! I'm happy that you're here with me. So last year I read 25 books, and I feel like that's a bit too much to do like individual rating of every book, and a bit too little to do like a top 10 and a bottom 10, because that would just leave a weird middle 5. So I decided that it would be more fun to tier rank. So we have 5 tiers. We have I Wish I Was Illiterate. I feel like that's kind of self-explanatory. On every level, this book was bad. It was a nonsensical premise. It was nonsensical prose, and it really should have stayed in the drafts. The second tier is I'm happy for you though, or sorry that it happened. I do not recall. I read and I did not remember anything. The third tier is like, it was fine. Like, I read it. I didn't hate or did not enjoy it. I did retain some information from it, but it was a book. The fourth tier gets a bit spicy. Is what does it mean? What does it all mean? It's like I recognize that this book is trying to achieve something. Did I understand it? Not necessarily, but I can recognize that it has some literary merit. Just above that, we have You Will Always Be Famous, which is just a book that I enjoyed much so, very much so, that I might revisit or just that was fun. And finally, we have Book of All Time, which is the highest award you can receive on this channel. It's just Book of All Time. What else is there to say? It's like the prose, the narrative, the themes, the characters, just like mind fucking blown. So let's do this chronologically because you'll see I had a bit of a weird beginning of the year. First, I read This Is How You Lose the Time War. I put it in It Was Fine. And I am so sorry to all of my friends who recommended me this book. It was like, it's so amazing, but it just felt like it was doing so much. And I could see it doing so much that I never really got into the emotion of it. And I just felt a bit detached from it. It's like a science fiction, star-crossed lovers through time thing. And conceptually, it's like really interesting and hits everything I want or would want in a science fiction novel because it's very loose in its world building. But I just felt a bit untethered sometimes, which makes sense because it's a time travel story. So, yeah, sorry, friends. What did I read next? Meet Me in the Margins. This goes here. This one I got from the gailey. It's a rom-com about a book editor who falls in love with the heir of the crumbling empire she works for, but through book annotations, which is cute. It has all the reasons to be a cute read, and I really did not care for it. Like, it meant nothing to me. Then I read A Beautifully Foolish Endeavor. This one will be hard because it is a sequel to a book I very much enjoyed, but it's just not that good. It's really not that good. I think I'll put it in It Was Fine because it is fine, but it's just so deeply irritating and not very exciting with what it does for the story and the 2-book arc. Then I read I Want to Say Sorry, but There's No One to Say Sorry to, which is a book about Jewish people in Poland around the time and in the aftermath of the genocide and World War II. I will put it in It Was Fine. The subject matter is, of course, super heavy, and I did learn quite a bit from it, especially because we don't really talk about Poland and Polish anti-Semitism when we do learn about the Second World War, at least in my education. So I think it was very informative, but I find that the different vignettes were sometimes not very distinct in the their voices. I also got this one from off of NetGalley, and it's from a Polish writer, and it's actually his first fiction novel, and it's actually his first book of fiction, and it's heavily inspired by the nonfiction work that he's been doing on remembering the genocide. And I think I would almost enjoy the nonfiction work more because I think it really lacks that kind of more personal touch to the stories. Then I read The Sex Lives of African Women. It was a fun one. I think I'm going to put it as well, and it was fine. It was fine. It is an interesting book to read and to learn more and kind of debunk misconceptions that one may have about sexuality on the African continent, and also to know that it's said in women's voices, so it's not based on like narratives or myth that we have about sexuality in Africa, but it's really from the people who experience it. It really features like such a diversity of experiences from queer women and trans women and like people who do sex work, from people who are from the diaspora, who have suffered sexual violence, etc. There's really a wide range of experiences. I did enjoy it and I actually recommend it, but it was fine. Then, oof, we have Bullshit Jobs, which is just the book of all time. I have already talked about this book at length, but it just came at the perfect time in my life and just like completely restructured the way I think about work and what I look to like fulfill me and like completely reinforce my political beliefs and engagement. So there's nothing more to say about this. Then I read Disorientation. This one goes in You Will Always Be Famous. Yeah, this one is a fun one. It's a campus novel, but the main character is in grad school. She's a Taiwanese American student who was kind of forced into studying this one Chinese American poet who she finds is quite trite and boring. And then she uncovers like this massive secret about this poet during her thesis research, and everything blows up in her face, and it is very entertaining, and I think it's a great debut novel, and I actually want to talk about it more in terms of like grad school novels that kind of deconstruct some of the ideas that we have about campus novels and dark academia. But you know how slow I am to read stuff and make videos, so you will probably see this video in like 2 to 3 business years. And then I read Real Life, which I already talked about in my mid-year book freakout tag. It's just, it is a book of all time. And it's also a debut novel, but like what Disorientation does to a certain extent, Real Life does like tenfold and with such depth and complexity. Honestly, Brendan Taylor, I do not like this man as a person. I feel bad saying this, but he's extremely annoying on Twitter. But his books kind of slap, so yeah, book of all time. Next, we have an unauthorized fan treatise. This is definitely You Will Always Be Famous. Lauren James, I know you've committed awful crimes in fandom, but it's fine because you made this book that is such a perfect snapshot of like 2010s fan culture. So you will always be famous for that. Then we have Binti. It was fine. You know, it was my first foray into Afrofuturism. I wanted it to be a success so badly, but I think it was a bad move on me to listen to the audiobook and have to hear so many words that I don't know how to write or what they are. And so it was a bit disorienting. And when I pick up science fiction novel that has a lot more world building to it, I will read like an actual physical version because it was short, but I was really confused for most of it. Like, mind you, I usually listen to audiobooks on like 1.5. I had to listen to this one on like 1. It is kind of a novella, so the story is very contained. And I kind of realized that I am more interested in like a more epic, sprawling story or something that has more of a resolution to it and not really this snapshot of an in between moment. So, yeah. What did I read next? I read How to Do Nothing by Jenny Odell. This one is also You Will Always Be Famous. It's just like kind of did the same thing that Bullshit Job does, but in a nicer way to me. Like nicer, like less gut punching, but it does have a few gut punching moments. Like it's worth it in my opinion. Then, oh, I read Save the Cat, which is a screenwriting book. It was fine. I mean, I did learn a few things that are definitely useful if you're trying to get movies made by like major studios and stuff. But I'm trying to write like a short film, which will probably never get made or that I will make myself. So this was not really the book for it, but it is useful in terms of like analyzing scripts and understanding kind of what makes a story tick. Then I read The Echo Wife. Yeah, You Will Always Be Famous. Yeah, that was fun. As like really speculative fiction, the way we like it, with the morally gray characters and the like people who aren't supposed to be people starting to people. Awesome. Then we have The Vegetarian. This one goes in what does it mean, what does it all mean, because this tier was created for this book. It was trying to do something. There is quite a bit of literary merit in it. I think the style is quite arresting. The emotions, there are a lot of emotions that are being like aroused, yeah, roused by this book. I mean, emotions of disgust when they talk about a woman's body. It does, think I think it's trying to say something, but I honestly don't know enough about Korean society to say what it's trying to say. You know what I mean? Like, it feels like a critic of something that I'm not in on, which might be why I don't get it. But it's quite powerful. Like, yeah, this is unsettling. Oh, talking about unsettling books, no one is talking about this. Honestly, yes. Actually, I know what this book means, but the first half, I was on a trip that I didn't want to be on. Already talked about it in my freak out video, but yeah, weird book. Not sure about that. What was next? Less by Andrew Sean Greer. I really wish I hadn't read this book. Like, you know what? I'm sorry that it happened because this book did nothing for me. No, it did nothing for me. Actually, try to do less. No, you couldn't. The Temps. You know what? I'm kind of not sure where I would put it. I think it was fine. Yeah, almost goes into what does it mean? What does it all mean? But it's not being subtle enough about what it means to go into that tier. I was very entertained by it. I enjoyed it very much. It was a bit of a heavy handed, almost too cynical to work book about the nature of work and innovation and scammers. We'll go into my why does every sci fi book or speculative fiction book feel like it's a critique of Elon Musk? It's becoming tiring. Like, if you're not gonna kill the man in narrative, don't do it. Like, this is my only pleasure, you know? And I read Cult Classic. I read this as an arc. I think this one will go into what does it mean, what does it all mean, because genuinely, at some point, I was totally on board with this, but it got really weird. I think it didn't really know if it wanted to be a book about love in the modern age, or about this specific woman's story, or about cults, or about the occult, or about like celebrity culture. There were so many things in this book. I did enjoy it, and I think it's a great, I wouldn't say great, but it's a good story. But because it attempted for something like great, it goes into what does it mean, what does it all mean. Oh god, Then I read Girl Crush. This one I also got off of NetGalley, and I have to say, and I have to confess, that I only wanted to read it because everyone was dunking on it. But then when I read it, I felt bad about wanting to dunk on it because it is so obviously not ready to be a book yet. It is so blatantly a draft of a draft. Like, so many things are wrong there. So many things should have been edited. If the thing is, I resent every single influencer on earth getting a book deal, like whatever. But the thing is, at this point, it's almost predatory of the book industry to put these young women who have no writing experience whatsoever in the position to get fucking eaten up. Because obviously, the person who wrote this doesn't know how to write. Like, it is so obvious that she doesn't know how to write a fucking novel that makes sense and has themes and has like characters that make sense and just like a fuck. Ugh, it did. What? I actually feel so bad for the author because she was getting bullied left and right. Like, wow. Yeah, it was bad. Then I read Scattered All Over the Earth. This one goes in what does it mean? What does it all mean? Because it does interesting things with language and the idea of language and translation, which are absolute obsessions of mine, and it's very unresolved. And yes, it does have like, you know what? Actually, it goes in You Will Always Be Famous because I was just saying qualities and stuff that I understood, so I understood it. It does have commentary about like the climate crisis and just like cultural appropriation and the fluid nature of identity and just like, yeah, it was a fun time. Like, I remember the time that I was listening to it on audiobook, I was really looking forward to it and enjoying it. You Will Always Be Famous. Then I read The Raven Boys. Oh, book of all time. I have a whole reading vlog about why it's the fucking book of all time, and it's 40 minutes long, so I don't need to go into depth about it. Then I read Streaming, Sharing, Stealing. It was for class. It was fine. Ugh, it was kind of bloated and annoying and had too much faith in algorithms and artificial intelligence, which I will never understand. Then I read Tomorrow Sex Will Be Good Again, which goes and it was fine. It's an interesting reflection on the consequences of Me Too on our conversations about sex and consent, and it also dives back deeper into the roots of this culture around sexuality and the gendered ideas around sex, and it's quite interesting. I did also read it for a class. Like, it wasn't a sign reading, but I read it like as a way to finish my final essay. It was quite good. Yeah, it was fine. Then I read Eileen, Lady. What? Otessa Moshfegh is an interesting writer. Most of her books will always be in this category for me because she is allergic to having a point. You know, you're just puzzled and a bit unsettled and just a bit weirded out and grossed out when you leave one of her books. I felt a little bit sick at the end of it. Like, I don't want to accuse her of anything, but there is a disturbing element of fat phobia in this book that really tainted the experience for me. But I can't say anything about Artisa Moshfegh's book that ALC hasn't said. Like, just read her review of Laponia because she eats her up. It's actually, I love her negative reviews. Her review of A Little Life and her review of Anya Gihara is insane. Wow. Yeah. Wait, I mixed up the covers, but yeah. Then I read The Dream Thieves, which is also a book of all time, which I am also working on editing the reading vlog for. I have 2 hours of footage, guys. Like, I need to be restrained. Just book of all time, like like you guys. Book of all time. Yeah. Do I have something to give for the Book of All Time award? Like, yeah, I have weights that I never use. This is the Book of All Time award. Wow. Oh, my back just cracked because of that. Wow. Okay, this is enough. I've talked too much already. I have physical TBR video coming up. The Dream Thieves fucking reread vlog coming up. And I have like a bookshop vlog, but like a tiny haul coming up, like a Christmas book haul. So yeah, stay tuned. See you soon. Bye.